Hello, and welcome back to BSG webinars. My name is Dan Carney, Graphic Design Manager at BSG. Thanks for joining us. This is our 20th episode. So if you haven't seen any of our other webinars, be sure to look us up and subscribe on YouTube under BSG Craft, where you'll find them all. Also, be sure to check back soon for more webinars. Those are always located at bsgcraftbrewing.com and clicking on the webinars tile on our homepage. We also announce upcoming webinars in our newsletter and on all of our social media channels. So follow us there if you haven't already. Next up will be a virtual tasting journey with Carl Dingemans, traditional Belgian beers and the malt that makes them. That'll be next Thursday, December 10th. Please register and join us for that one. We curated a great list of Belgian beers that should be available in most areas. So we encourage that you fill your glass with one and follow along. So now on to today's presentation, Hop Research Council supporting public USDA hop breeding programs. Before I introduce today's guests, I'd like to encourage everyone to stick around for the Q&A after their presentation, where we'll be also joined by RAR's Patricia Aaron. We're also going to be giving away a BSG swag pack to a lucky viewer that asks a great question. So please ask away. So with that, I would like to welcome our guests, Judy and Brian Thote. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Dan. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and you?
Just fine, thank you. Here in Oregon, where it's actually not raining today.
That's good. Well, it's not snowing here in Minnesota, so we'll take that.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Brian.
And for anybody else on the West Coast, good morning. We're still here on the left coast. We're still in the morning hours.
Well, we're happy that you guys were able to join us today. If you'd like to just do a quick introduction to yourselves, and then we can kind of get underway with the presentation.
Sure, be glad to, Dan. Yeah, my name is Judy Thote, and I am the technical director with the Hop Research Council. So basically, I'm responsible for their research program.
And I'm Brian Thote, the executive director. So yes, we are husband and wife, and we work together during the day, and even managed to talk a little bit about hops over the dinner table. So it's been very successful for us.
That's great. Well, thanks guys for joining us again. I will let you get your presentation underway. So I'm going to drop off now and let you guys take over.
Okay, so we're with the Hop Research Council. Many of you have probably not even heard of the Hop Research Council. In 1979, a group of hop industry members that believed in the benefit of a united research effort was organized. And this group consisted of growers, merchants, and I'll use merchant and dealer interchangeably today as we talk through this, and brewers. And the objective for the HRC is to fund research related to hop production, quality, and sustainability of hops grown throughout the US. Today, a majority of the hop production is in Washington, Idaho, and Oregon. However, hops are now produced in 28 different states throughout the US. It's a membership organization, and our membership currently consists of 12 brewing members, 10 merchants, 3 hop grower associations, or the state hop commissions. That would be Washington, Idaho, and Oregon. We have 2 individual growers that are direct members and 11 associate members.
So what are some of the projects? What are our research priorities and some critical projects that are conducted under the USDA-ARS? So one of them is novel and innovative solutions for managing disease pressure. And our primary target for this work is downy and powdery mildew. But with the advent of drip irrigation, we're also seeing some problems with fusarium wilt. And we've just started a new research project addressing this. Most of our pathology work is done through Dave Gent, and his photo is on the right there. He's with the USDA-ARS based in Corvallis, but he also does a lot of work in Washington. He's also looking at ways to develop healthier plants so that they are more resistant to disease. So he's looking at economical and sustainable manners of controlling diseases. We also are looking at smart farming research in water utilization, heat tolerance, and drought tolerance. And we expect that a lot of this work is going to be conducted by the new research physiologist, plant physiologist, who will be located in Prosser, Washington. This is also a USDA-ARS position, and it's actually a new position that was formed due to industry lobbying efforts. The HRC on its own is also looking at 2 irrigation research projects aimed at better utilizing our valuable water resources. And we're doing these through a private sector research group. There's also the public sector development of germplasm and new cultivars, which we do help to financially fund. Not all of it, but just some parts of it. And the objectives of this particular research is to look at superior pest and disease resistance, broad adaptation of hop varieties, increased yield potential, improved brewing quality. And the USDA researchers, they also work to develop new parental hop lines that can be used by both public and private hop breeding companies. This research is conducted by Dr. John Henning and Dr. Kayla Altendorf, both with the USDA-ARS. And John, for a long time, was the only USDA hop breeder, as he started his position, I believe, in 1998. And he was only recently joined by Kayla Altendorf this past spring when her new position was created by the USDA, again, due to very successful industry-wide lobbying efforts. The USDA facilities are located in Corvallis, Oregon, and that's where John is located, and Prosser, Washington, that's where Kayla's located. Let's report to Dr. Ryan Hayes, who is the research leader for the Forage Seed and Cereal Research Unit, which is also located in Corvallis. The HRC really has its value in being an important part of the communication loop between researchers and industry. We fund research conducted by the USDA, universities, and private companies. And these researchers have the expertise and knowledge base to conduct research that's relevant to the hop industry. And also, many of our projects are funded jointly between the HRC and the state hop commissions. And we couldn't conduct this research without the valuable contributions in kind that are made by our membership of brewers, growers, and hop merchant members. They donate, for example, space in fields. They'll do lab analyses at reduced prices, and they do the many, many brewing trials to help evaluate potential new hop varieties. So this diverse membership of the HRC, brewers, growers, and merchants, gives us a complete supply chain that is extremely valuable in coordinating our research efforts. Now, how do we determine what research is needed? Well, every couple of years, we survey our membership to determine their research priorities. This survey enables researchers to develop projects that are highly relevant to our membership. Our priorities, in fact, are recently being updated and will be used when we put out a call for research projects in the spring of 2021.
So within the HRC, one of our goals has been to add some structure to the overall process so that the information that we observe, collect, organize, and we can collect that and then in a timely fashion provide that back to the USDA. So the two pictures, the top is Dr. John Henning, and the bottom picture is Dr. Kayla Altendorf. And for both Judy and I, we are in the fields every summer. So we're located 3 miles from the nearest hop farm here in Oregon, and within a 40-minute drive of all the hop farms in Oregon. So we do spend time out on the dirt looking at the hop plants during the growing season. And we make our observations. We will meet up with brewers that want to come out and look at some of the trial lines that are currently being grown here. And we pay very close attention to their comments because they're the ones that will come out, and especially close to harvest, they'll rub and sniff, and they'll give us their opinion on each of the selections out there. So we're very good about being able to capture that information and then provide that back to the hop breeders. We also sit on the Public Hop Breeding Advisory Committee, and this committee acts as a communication channel to represent our broad industry. It provides information objectives for new varieties back to the hop breeders. Examples would include the for high alpha variety, photoperiod insensitivity. So hops are very daylight sensitive, which explains the reason they grow best in northern latitudes. Growers in Texas will use grow lights to supplement the daylight. And so trying to breed out that sensitivity in hops is one of the goals that has surfaced from our membership. A large database is maintained and it's updated and shared. So this information is available to our membership through our website. So they can access this, look at the selections, where they're being grown, chemical analysis, all the information that we've gathered. Our membership has access to that and can look at what's coming through the pipeline. So coordinate brewing trials and sensory analysis. So this picture comes from the winter meeting that was held in Portland, Oregon in January of 2020. And what we do is based on volumes that are harvested, the aroma results, and overall potential, we'll schedule brewing trials with our membership. This material is then tasted and rated by our membership. Normally would take place during our winter and summer meetings, but of course we've gone virtual these days. So we've had to alter our plans there, and we brew beers, we send them to central locations where we know that our membership will have access to it and can go in and taste and get feedback on those particular beers. In Portland, this last winter, we had 14 samples that were tasted by the panelists there. Growers get excited about new selections showing high yield potential, disease resistance, or great aromas. And brewers are quick to notice new potential. The search for new flavor and aroma characteristics is ongoing. We also work with the breeders here, and the breeder, once a selection is very promising, then we will make plans to have that grown out as an elite selection. And before we can grow that material out, that selection, the rhizomes from that selection, are submitted to the Clean Plant Center Northwest. And the center will screen for plant viruses, and if found, the plants then will undergo a process to eliminate the virus. We can then make sure that the elite grow out program is virus free. So we'll just kind of give you an overview of the process that the breeders follow. This process can last 13 plus years from when a cross is made to a variety released. we have in our advanced line selections that are being grown out in Washington, Idaho, and Oregon, we have crosses that date back to 2000. So it takes a long period of time to screen these selections and determine if the USDA will release a new variety. So in year one, the initial cross is made. Now for hops, of course, hops, it's only the female plant that is desired in the field. That's what produces the cone. The male plant is undesirable. They will actually go in and rogue out any male plants that appear. Because when you have a male plant, then you will have seed development in the field. Well, for the breeder, they need both. So the breeders then will make those crosses and seeds will be harvested. And in a typical year where they're making crosses, there can be 30 to 40,000 seeds that are produced. So it is truly a numbers game.
Okay, so after the initial cross is made, and a lot of there's a lot of thought that goes into the parental lines that are used for these crosses by the hop geneticists. You know, it depends on come they're looking for, but there's quite a bit of thought that goes into the parental selection. So, as Brian said, they may come up with 30 to 40,000 seeds from 1 year of crossing. The seed then has to be vernalized and it is germinated and it's grown out in a greenhouse in trays. There'll be thousands and thousands of plants. And then the hop breeders will be screening for male, females, obviously tossing out the males, unless of course some look good for parental lines, and also for powdery mildew and downy mildew screening. And so from that year one, say for example, they had 30,000 seeds from the crosses that they did in year one. By year 2 or 3, that could be down to about 5%. So maybe about, say out of 30,000, now they're down to about 1,500 plants that they are then going to in field assessments.
So in years 3 to 5, it's field assessments. So we'll establish those plants under trellis. And typically there will be, for each of the selections that are being established, we'll plant 3 hills. And that material then is observed during the growing season. Agronomic summary is generated. Screening for mildews, powdery and downy mildew will be conducted, and basic chemistry on the material that's harvested. So that would be an alpha, beta, and HSI, and a percent oil that would be analyzed at the completion of harvest.
Okay, so then we move on to next phase, which is advanced selections. And so let's go back to that, remember that original 30,000 seeds. Well, now at this point, we're lucky if we have 20 plants or 20 lines that are looking really good. So what they'll do, the plant breeders will establish these lines under a trellis, a commercial trellis, typically in 3 locations, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And they can initially start out as 6 to 10 hills per variety per location. If they're looking really good, they may expand them, but they may start out with 6 to 10 hills. They're continuing with their agronomic assessment. So the plant breeders, they'll go out, they'll walk through the fields, they'll get an agronomic assessment. They're looking to see how these lines are now performing under more commercial conditions. They'll do a full chemistry on them. And then we'll also start to do an aroma profile. And this is what's called Source, and it is funded by the Brewers Association. So it's been a very good method for the hop breeders to obtain good good aroma data on these experimental lines. So those that are showing a lot of promise, good aroma characteristics, they will then go into initial brewing trials. And then, as Brian said, typically the brewing trials, we would evaluate them in our winter and summer meeting, but now we're actually doing internal evaluations to accommodate COVID. And in fact, BSG is one of the brewers that does these brewing trials for us. So perhaps, one or two of these advanced selections are going to be selected by the hop breeders to go into elite trials.
So the elite trials, that's a larger volume that's growing, 1 to 5 acres typically, and we'll get a commercial view of those selections. So that provides more precise information on the agronomics, the yield, pickability, drying, and the hop chemistry. And we will also conduct brewing trials on this material. The harvested material is sold to HRC brewers and merchants. And so brewers throughout the US can work with your favorite merchant or dealer. And as long as they're a member of HRC, they will have the potential to have some of these selections that are available after the elite line grow out. So elite line grow out just gives us a lot of information about how these selections will perform on a commercial sized grow out.
So after the elite trials comes the biggest decisions that the hop breeders have to make. Should we release this line variety or not? And that's a decision that takes a lot of information. They use all the information they have on it, plus of course the information that's been provided by growers and brewers. And a variety may indeed be released, but not every year. It's a hard choice to make. Not all of the lines are standouts, and it's the same in a private breeding program as well. But we have had some very good public varieties released. Excuse me. Many of you use and know Cascade. Cascade is a public variety. The plants that became Cascade were discovered in 1967 and placed in the USDA breeding program in Corvallis. Years later, Cascade was released as a superior aroma variety in 1972, but the cross happened in 1956. Another recent release is Cashmere, and Cashmere is the last release from the WSU, Washington State University, hop breeding program. It's a 2013 release, and Cashmere is the daughter of Cascade, and it includes some northern brewer germplasm through the male parent. Our latest release comes out of John Henning's program, Triumph, and it was the result of a cross made in 2000 and was released in 2019.
So what are the growers' interests in new selections? Agronomic performance, primarily yield, is critically important. That is measured as return per acre. These growers have large capital investments in the trellis systems, picking and cleaning equipment, and drying facilities. Enhanced disease and pest resistance. A large amount of disease pressure is common in hops. Not only the current strains of mildews, but these fungus are consistently mutating and creating new strains. So this is an ongoing battle to control the outbreaks. Balance out the picking window. So hops are harvested mid-August through end of September. And of course, heavy rainfall or freezing temperatures will greatly impact the quality of the materials. So we cannot extend that harvest period. The middle of the harvest period is very crowded today with very popular varieties. So having a variety which matures earlier is a real advantage to improve the throughput for the growers. And of course, the growers want to know that there's excitement and demand from the brewers. Without that excitement and demand, hot varieties will quickly disappear. So the brewer's interest, of course, high quality product with good storability. And brewers want to know that the individual hop varieties will be available from year to year. Building a label around several varieties is risky. Having continuity in the supply chain is critical for success. Hops have become the signature of many labels, and the intensity of the aromas and flavors is the key building block. And of course, diversity of those flavors is also important. We're always searching for the new and improved.
So basically, to summarize what the HRC does is, in terms of the public hop breeding efforts, is we do a lot of coordination of things that are, probably not possible from a financial standpoint within the USDA. So we help to coordinate the aroma sensory work through Draft Lab, Hop Source, and that's what's funded by the funded by the Brewers Association. We arrange for the experimental brewing and industry assessments. We organize the elite line trials in all 3 major production areas to showcase potential new varieties. And we gather information and share this information with the USDA hop breeders so that we can help them to complete the cycle by having as much information as possible so that they could make well-informed decisions on the release of a new variety.
So this is a true success story for U.S. hop growers, hop dealers, and brewers. HRC is a key component in the process, working with the USDA, the universities, and private research groups, keeps our industry extremely successful. The industry continues to expand. Hop production has nearly doubled since 2012. Total U.S. production now exceeds 113 million pounds. The U.S. is the largest hop growing region in the world, with approximately 40% of the world's production. Domestic consumption continues to grow. Craft segment increased from a little less than 1 pound per barrel average to 1.7 pounds per barrel average over the last 10 years. The export market has also increased dramatically for the industry. The total farm gate value for hops is close to $650 million, which is a big increase over the last 7 or 8 years. So this truly supports the proliferation of beer styles, as we've become known as the leaders in developing these styles throughout the world. So with that, we would like to open it up to questions. If anybody has some questions that they would like us to address.
Yeah, Brian, why don't we see if Dan, do you know, is John or Kayla Altendorf, are they on the call?
I do see John.
Okay, could you bring him up so we could introduce him personally?
I think so. And I'd also like to bring in Patty Aaron from Raw.
Yes.
Let's see here. So John, I've just promoted you to a panelist. So if you want to join in.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, John. Hi, Patty.
Hi, John. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Okay, and I think Patty's going to lead the Q&A. Did you want to say a few words first, John?
No, we can go right to Patty. I'm good.
Well, great. Actually, we do have a question that came in while you guys were presenting, so I'd like to start with that one. We have Matt who asks, we're in Canada and are on the hunt to be on the forefront of the Canadian market with hop trends. Do you guys allow outside of the US breweries to trial anything?
John, have you ever done that?
No, I haven't actually sent out hop material for brewing outside of the United States.
Okay, well, there's some opportunities there, so maybe we can get in touch with BSG Canada and kind of help facilitate that as well. So, so some other questions that we had come through is, what are public versus proprietary varieties?
Do you want me to answer that, guys, or do you want to do it?
Yeah, John, you do it.
All right. So publicly developed hop varieties are those that have been developed by the USDA or in the past by Washington State University. The funding for these programs comes from the US government or state government. And as such, or as well as from Hop Research Council and other funds, as such, these are made public because the US government is paying for this research through the tax dollars of the United States citizens. Private varieties, on the other hand, are varieties that are developed by private plant breeding companies. And the difference being is that public varieties are traditionally there's no no sort of fees for producing those. They're free to the public.
Great. Well, next question that came in was, what sort of resulting differences do you generally find in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho? And what is the benefit of test growing varieties in all three locales?
Okay, so three very different climates. So Oregon, the growing region is west of the Cascade Mountains, much higher rainfall in Western Oregon. In Washington, that is a high desert. Annual rainfall in Washington, in Yakima is 6 inches annually. So it's a very dry location. Everything is growing today under drip irrigation. It's a sandier soil for growing, and the heat units are much higher. So it is a very different climate for growing the hops. In hops, there's really two classifications. You have the aroma hops and you have alpha hops. So the alpha hops, it's really focused on the production of alpha acids. And that those are the hops that are typically extracted into extract for the bittering character. And those alpha hops do very well in that dry heat of Eastern Washington. In Idaho, it's southern Idaho, southwestern part of the state. It is more similar to Washington climates. The temperatures are much higher than what we have in Western Oregon. And it also is relatively dry there. It's still a little bit different from Washington climate. So each of those climates and soil structures will produce a slightly different hop. And so even if it's the same variety, a Cascade growing in Oregon, growing in Washington, growing in Idaho, will have some very minor flavor and aroma differences. So that will vary, and it varies from year to year as to what the climate will be in each of those areas. So they are very distinct.
Well, thanks. Next question. Has there been research into heat-resistant hops with regards to biotransformation in the brew house?
I know you just, okay, I'm going to go to the answer because I'm going to reread that. is there has there been research into heat-resistant hops with regard to biotransformation in the brew house? Okay, this is an interesting question because I'm not sure where you're going with heat-resistant hops. I think if we had heat-resistant hops, we wouldn't be able to have the bittering capacity that we mainly use hops for these days. But I think I see where you're going, Matt, with this biotransformation, where we're looking for flavor and the effect of release of flavor rather than the bitterness coming from the hops themselves. I don't know of any research into heat-resistant hops. However, and I think Dr. Yin has a follow-up question coming soon, some of our newer research in the industry is really focused on flavor and what hops can provide for interesting flavor. And biotransformation, what little we know of it so far, is one of those avenues that brewers have been playing with more and more. We even have people now using enzymes in the brewing process to help release some of those compounds that are bound to glycosides. So I think if that answers your question fairly well, we could go all day on biotransformation. But John, do you know of anything?
With regards to looking at producing hops under heat and drought, my project has a postdoc who's been looking at heat and drought in hops and looking at the actual expression of genes that take place in this. And I think we're getting a much better handle on what's happening in that respect when plants are growing under high temperatures or under drought conditions. One of the more interesting components that we saw was there was a direct influence upon a number of the chemical or the enzymes that are involved in the flavoring components, where you see some decreases in their expression under heat or drought conditions. And so we're going to be continuing that work, but it's certainly providing us with some genetic targets that we can use that possibly will aid for breeding sort of drought tolerant hops, drought and heat tolerant.
Very cool. So that leads us to what is the next generation of hop flavor the researchers are working on?
That's a tough one. We follow the industry, and for a while there, it looked like industry was going to be going into the Pilsners and lager realm. I don't know anymore to be able to say that that's the case, but we're certainly trying to do whatever industry needs us to do. And, if we're going to find something that's got outstanding aroma and flavor, that's as juicy fruitish as possible, we're not going to throw that out by any means. That's still a desire from industry, but I'm not sure that answers the question.
Well, I think it gives an idea. I mean, there's definitely that long timeline that you need to, get these hops cultivated into the market. And it's a really tough thing to try and figure out with such a nimble, market right now. So,
right.
Next question is, Galaxy, Mosaic, and Citra are some of the best hops in my opinion, but imagine they will be replaced in the near future. Is there an experimental hop varietal in the elite stage that you are personally excited about?
No, we have two selections right now that are in the elite trials. One is 074 and one is 008. And we're excited about these two for several reasons. 008 is an earlier maturing selection. So that is harvested mid-August, as early as August 8th or 9th. And so that fits that picking window criteria. And then 074, which is it's a sister to Triple Pearl, which was released in 2013. That has some very nice flavor profiles, the Tropico, stone fruit, floral. And so that one is showing some nice potential and good yield potential back to the growers also. These wouldn't be replacements for the Citro Mosaic type hop, the big, juicy, citrus flavored hops that are used in IPAs. And so, no, there's really no elite selection that is targeted as an IPA type hop. But these two that are in the elite trials now are looking very favorable, but it's for different reasons other than just an IPA, a new IPA hop that's being produced.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to
I would
add to that, Matt, that those varieties are fairly new. And during the presentation, Judy and Brian talked about the release of some very popular hops like Cascade, you know, going back to the 70s. Sometimes these varieties hang out for a really long time because of the process. It takes so long to come back into the market with a new hop, right? So 10 years minimum, maybe 15, maybe upwards of 20, depending on who's sponsoring the hop. And it really depends on if we get lucky and we get great crosses. I think those hops that Brian talked about are amazing, and I'm really hoping we're going to be able to push them out. We've been able to brew with them, some really, really great flavors. They are not replacements by any means. However, if Judy or Brian or John wants to talk about the need in the industry for replacements, can we talk about Cascade for a little bit?
Yes, Cascade. We do have some lines that are coming down the pipeline that have matched up really well with Cascade, with flavor profiles, and that do have some good yield and better disease resistance. So those are in the pipeline. And we also have some more of the really unique aroma types that are coming through too. What we're seeing with the elite stage are a lot of the selection processes that took place 10, 12 years ago. And at that point, flavor and aroma were not the huge component of it. We were all looking for replacements for Willamette. And so what you're seeing in the elite state now are ones that are not necessarily the real gigantic flavor ones, but we do have them coming down the pipeline.
Thanks. So you mentioned hop production has doubled since 2012. Are ideal growing climates becoming more scarce? And is there research going into growing hops in alternate climates such as the Midwest?
Yes, as I commented on, hops are now growing in 28 states. And so we do see hop production in Michigan. We're seeing hop production in New York. Again, the climates are very different there, especially in the summer humidities, which just is a thriving atmosphere for the mildews. And so that is a challenge that they have. We've had some recent hop production in Colorado, and that's closer to that high desert environment, and production there is actually doing quite well. Some in Montana that is also done quite well. So yes, there's diversity now in the hop growing regions. We're seeing an increase. It's a small increase. Still, 96, 97% of the hops produced in the U.S. are produced in the Pacific Northwest. But we are starting to see, and there's a number of research projects that are ongoing about producing hops in these areas. They're able to overcome many of the challenges that are out there for growing hops in those specific regions. And I would expect to see that continue. There's certainly brewers in those states that prefer to source locally, and that works into what some of their requirements are. And so we are definitely seeing an expansion in those hop growing areas.
So if I could add something to that, Brian, we've also been pushing out a lot of the experimental lines that are not yet in the elite stage to some of these other Midwest states for them to start trialing them at an earlier stage. And I think we're going to just see more and more of this happening, just simply because the environments there are so different than Washington. And we really need to get a better handle on how well they produce there. I had a chance to visit some of my experimental lines in Minnesota and Wisconsin last year, year before last. And while they're doing well, it's a different climate. And so if we could look at these things at an earlier stage, that's a desirable situation.
Yeah, that actually was a question I was going to have. If you guys kind of take an elite staged hop and then send that out to various different climates just to see how it then reacts in those areas. So, well, on to the next question. Approximately how far off are we from a new public variety being released?
That's your call, John.
Well, since I get credit for whenever I release a variety, of course, the sooner the better from my perspective. But I've learned the hard way that releasing a variety too early can just result in it stagnating. And so typically what we want to look for now is that we want to see that general brewing excitement about something before it's going to be released. So that's, I don't see something being released within this next year, but I could be mistaken.
Well, that's exciting. I'm sure everyone wants the new shiny object, right?
Yep. Yep.
So one question, do public and private varieties follow the same approximate release to market processing timeline?
No. No, there's a different dynamic that is occurring in the private breeding programs. The biggest difference being that the land available for the private companies to develop varieties is significantly larger. And in many cases, what they're able to do is to jump from a single hill early evaluation and plant out 2 acres to 5 acres of something and get that out into the market immediately. The public hop breeding program does not have that capability. So what we try to do is just work steadily up through the system, going through all of our steps and making sure that what we put out is actually going to be profitable for the grower and have some disease resistance as well. I'm not saying that the public or private varieties don't have disease resistance, or I'm not criticizing what they do. It's just simply, it's a different dynamic.
Well, thank you. So are there any efforts to breed for certain terpene, thiol, et cetera, concentrations, or are efforts more centered on sensory evaluation?
It's a really good question. Short answer is yes and yes. I mean, right now we're using sensory evaluations primarily. I have research that is starting to look at some of the thiols and some of the other chemical components. But once we have a better idea of what makes what in beer, until we get to that point, it's still sensory.
Thank you. Are you doing any genetic mapping for important traits on hop chromosomes, or can you speak to that?
Yes. My project has recently assembled the hop genome into the 10 chromosomes. And so we're in the process of aligning all of the genes and finding all the genes in hop, and we've done that as well. So now it's simply a matter of doing some of the experiments, and in particular, if we could figure out a way to do thiol evaluations inexpensively rather than the $700 per sample that we currently have to pay, then we could start mapping out at that point what are the important genes and expression components that are involved in making these valuable flavor compounds. But the biggest hurdle was to be able to have a genome that we can actually know where all of the genes are on and all of the factors. And so we've accomplished that.
That's cool. Is there a way that brewers can sign up to become members of the HRC so that they can have kind of access to some of these new hop lines?
Yes, absolutely. And so go to our website, Hop Research Council. There's a tab there on membership. You can contact myself, and that's Brian Thote, and we will sit down and talk that through with you. Make sure that we're aligned. You know, what is the goals of the brewer? What can we provide you that has value to you? And then determine which membership category fits best for that brewer.
Well, thank you. We'll make sure if anybody gets in touch with us to have them get in touch with you as well. So let's see here. Not to throw any hop under the bus, but what is a good example of an overhyped hop that ended up not picking up steam? And what can growers, researchers do to salvage that hop and the time that went into it?
You know, there's a number of examples there. As John was pointing out, from release to inclusion in a beer for proprietary hops versus public hops is considerable difference in those two. And this is where we're trying to support John very closely in making sure that we have a better path that goes from release to inclusion. And so we're working with the BA, who's a member of HRC, and their forum to get information out about the hops. It's really, you know, a marketing effort. It's about generating some hype and excitement around these new selections. And then at the same time, making sure that there's enough quantity grown to meet the supply or meet the demand side. And so, you know, that is a very fine line that you walk, because growers don't want to plant something that there's not going to be a demand on. And so we need to create that excitement and enthusiasm amongst brewers to make sure that the demand is going to be there for the growers to put it in the ground. We work with plant propagators so that when a selection is released as a new variety, there's plants available to make sure that we can get that out to the growers, get it in the ground. We work with the merchants and dealers in trying to generate excitement of these new selections, new varieties as they're being released, so that they're promoting them and that they have quantities in their inventory to sell to brewers. So yeah, there's a lot of energy that's being directed there so that we have better success. You know, cashmere was a variety that was released, and you know, right out of the blocks, it did not do very well. There was some excitement generated, but then the demand exceeded the supply, and so brewers backed off. And then slowly growers have been planting some, and there's a little bit of excitement now around cashmere. So I think cashmere is going to slowly take off now, but it's been a very, very long road for its success. So we're trying to learn from those experiences and say, how can we do this better? How can we make sure that information is circulated out amongst the brewing community so that there is some excitement generated around these selections. So all of the brewing trials we're doing, all of the tasting, aroma analysis, all of that information helps us create that excitement around them.
That's great. So kind of in that same vein, and I have about time for about 2 more questions here. So do you complete research ahead of time on the names you give new public varieties? Is a good name critical for it to sell? Because I know here at BSG, we kind of run into that as well on some of the things that we do, and naming goes, into it very heavily.
Yeah. Again, another good question. Variety name. It's very possible that the name of a variety can aid in its success. I am now working more with industry to help in that respect, and so not necessarily just taking the lead in naming something. I did with Triumph just simply because I love Triumph motorcycles, but I think in the future I'm definitely open to hearing suggestions and getting a feel for what would take off in industry.
That's great.
So we can have a little contest here.
Yeah.
BSG, you can sponsor this. Name that next variety.
Well, somebody just chimed in and said Cyclops, just saying. So last question, do transgenic hops exist?
No. They only exist over in Germany and in Japan where they've done research on them. There has been no efforts by my program to do any sort of transgenic development of hops.
Well, that wraps us up for questions, guys. Appreciate you all coming on to take the time today. A lot of great questions too, so it's going to be hard to pick a winner. But again, thank you, Judy, Brian, Patty, and John. Greatly appreciate you. And once we finish up here, I will reach out to our Q&A swag pack winner. So look for an email here soon. And if we didn't get to any questions today, please send them to webinars@bsgcraft.com. And we'll work with Judy, Brian, John, and Patty to get you some answers. So remember, keep an eye out for new episodes. We announce those through our newsletter and social channels. And also for past webinars, please visit YouTube and search BSG Craft and subscribe. So from everyone at BSG, RAR, the Hop Research Council, and John, thanks for tuning in. I'm Dan Carney, and we'll see you around. Cheers, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Dan.
Cheers.
Miss y'all.
Thank you.